How's it going, guys? Bradley here, and if you're like me, you think automatic Mustangs are boring, specifically in this generation. Well, today we're going to talk about how you can manual swap your automatic Mustang. So this video is going to cover everything you're going to need, some of the troubles you might run into, and this is all going to pertain to your 96 through 04 GTs and Cobras. And if you're wondering why we're not driving the car while I'm talking about this, that's because while some of you might have seen That Dude in Blue reviewed this car, we ended up blowing out the motor mounts, which is what that Rock Auto box there in the back is. So right now the car is kind of just chilling until we get some motor mounts in. But let's go ahead and talk about everything you're going to need. Number one, you're going to need your transmission, which is going to be a T45 or a TR3650. You're going to need a flywheel. You're going to need a clutch. You're going to need a clutch cable, and you're going to need the pedal assembly. Those are your main things that you're going to need. But let's talk about some of the nice to have things that you're going to want. Number one is going to be a firewall adjuster, and that's because from factory there is not one. And the clutch cable will stretch over time, and this kind of helps compensate for that. You also can kind of get it to wherever position you'd like, where your foot's gonna sit. So another thing you're gonna want here is going to be a quadrant. That's because the factory one is plastic and it is known to fail. Now, it's gonna be pretty much impossible for me to show you it right now, but I'll put a picture of it up here on the screen. And another nice to have thing is going to be whatever shifter you want. The stock shifters in these cars are really long throw, and they just feel kind of funky. I have a Hurst here in this car, and I like it a lot. Another one that people like are the MGWs or the Pro 5.0s. Both of those are great options. I've driven cars with both, and they feel great. So as I'm sure you noticed, there's a couple items on that list that have an asterisk next to it, and we're gonna talk about those now. And your number one thing is going to be the flywheel situation, and some of your motors are going to have a 8-bolt, and some of them are going to have a 6-bolt flywheel or 6-bolt crank. And that is because some motors are Windsor motors and others are Romeos. Now in this car, this is a Romeo, which means it has a 6-bolt, but the Windsor motors have 8 bolts. And unfortunately, the only real way to tell is if you pull the transmission off, but another way you can tell is by looking at the amount of bolts holding on the valve cover. And I'm gonna put the corresponding number for each, the Romeo and the Windsor motor. And that'll give you a little bit of an idea of what flywheel you might need. If your motor has been taken apart or has been messed with, it may be harder to tell, and you won't, like I said, truly know unless you pull that trans off and find out for yourself. Now, let's talk about transmissions. So you have two main options here, and that's going to be your T45 or your TR3650. Your T45 was found in your 96 up until about 2000, and then everything beyond that, so your 01 to 04 is going to be the 3650. The 3650, people talk about being a lot smoother and just overall being a better trans, but some people say it's weaker than the T45. The T45 is a little bit more notchy, a little bit more raw, but seems to be a little bit stronger. Mine has some billet gears in it, so mine is got the notchiness a little bit amplified, especially with this Hurst shifter, which is also a bit of a notchy shifter. But I've been happy with that. The T45s are going to be a little bit cheaper, so if you're trying to ball on a budget here, the T45 might be the route to go. Now, the reason that there's an asterisk next to this is you can technically swap in a transmission from a newer car or an older car and cross those. So this car has a 96 T45 in it, and the big difference that comes with that is the type of speed sensor in the tail shaft. So you can swap the tail shaft to match with your car. I still have a 96 tail shaft in mine, and I'm able to use that because we tricked the ECU by messing with the numbers just until we could get the speedometer reading correctly based off of GPS. And I covered that in a video, which I'll put up in the cards right now. If you're going to be swapping a newer transmission into an older car, you might have a little bit of a different story. And I will drop a link down in the description on how you can maybe try and work around that and get that speedometer working right. But don't let anybody tell you it's not possible. It is possible. It is a little bit of a headache, but if you get a good deal on an older transmission for your newer car, by all means, go for it. Now, something to note, if your car was originally an automatic car, you are going to have to cut in that transmission tunnel just a little bit to expand it so you can actually fit the shifter down in there. This car was a manual from the factory, so it was already clearanced by the factory to fit the manual shifter up in there. But if your car is a true original automatic car, just expect to have to shave and cut that out just a little bit to get that shifter up in there. If you enjoyed this one, or if it was helpful, drop a like down below, leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next one.